Our top focus this hour: after tightening territorial stranglehold around Kabul, the Taliban are closing in on the Afghanistan capital. The insurgents are now camped just 50 kilometers or 30 miles away from Kabul. The President Ashraf Ghani has vowed to fight back with multiple strategy, and Ghani says that he will reorganize Afghan security forces and not allow the war be imposed on Afghans. Let's listen in.
I assure you that as your president, my focus is to prevent further instability, violence and displacement of the people. Thank you to the people who are standing among the security forces. Reorganizing the security forces is our priority.
Now, local sources suggest that the Taliban have infiltrated Maidan Shahar, where heavy fighting is ongoing near the governor's compound. The capital of Wardak province, Maidan Shahar, is the gateway to Kabul, and the Taliban could be literally knocking at the doors at this point. With the country's second and third largest cities having fallen into Taliban hands, Kabul is one of the few remaining cities still in the government's hands. It is effectively the last stand for government forces. The shocking Taliban advances have left the United States and other countries scrambling to airlift their nationals out of Kabul. US Marines have returned to Kabul to oversee emergency evacuations. Kabul residents fear they will be at the receiving end of Taliban violence. Along with the tens of thousands who have sought refuge in Kabul in recent weeks, they are now fleeing the country on flights from Kabul International Airport. Since the Taliban took control of the several of country's provincial capitals over the past week, tickets for flights out of Afghanistan have been scarce. Long queues were seen at check-in counters inside the airport. Afghanistan's second and third largest cities, Herat and in the west and Kandahar in the south, have fallen to the Taliban, and so has the capital of the southern province of Helmand. Taliban now hold half of Afghanistan's 34 provincial capitals and control more than two-thirds of the country. The Taliban are closing in on the Afghanistan capital. Insurgents are camped just 50 kilometers away from Kabul. President Ashraf Ghani, despite speculations of him stepping down, has vowed to fight back. Ghani says he will reorganize Afghan security forces and will not allow the war to be imposed on the Afghans. Now, many are fleeing from Afghanistan. Kabul is one of the few remaining cities still in government hands. It is effectively, at this point, the last stand for government forces. US Marines have returned to Kabul to oversee emergency evacuations. United States and other countries are scrambling to now airlift their nationals out of Kabul. Kabul residents, on the other hand, fear they will be at the receiving end of the Taliban violence, and along with tens of thousands who have sought refuge in Kabul. And joining us live is our correspondent Anas Malik from Kabul. He has been reporting from Ground Zero. Anas, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us about the situation on ground right now?
Well, there's intense fighting that is ongoing in Maidan Shahar in Wardak province. I am traveling there. This is in close proximity to the province of Kabul, to the capital city of Kabul. I'm not sure if you can hear intermittent firing behind me in this telephone call, but they're very, very clear. The shots are pretty clear. There is intense fighting very close to the provincial capital of Kabul, just about 45 kilometers. A post that IC has been abandoned by the Afghan military. The Afghan military is sending in reinforcements as we speak. They are trying to ensure that they push back the Taliban from coming towards the gate of Kabul. This is what the witness account is like on ground. There is no life as I see in the city of Maidan Shahar, where I was just 2 weeks ago, probably less than, in fact, 2 weeks ago even. And this is how the situation is like on ground. The Afghan government, Afghan National Army is trying to push back the Taliban. We're seeing migrations being taking place as well. And overall, if I talk to you about the scenario in the city, all the once you enter Maidan Shahar, you spot a market, and that market currently is closed. Even now I can hear intermittent firing that is ongoing at a distance, not where I am, but that indicates the severity of the crash that's ongoing.
Right, Anas. Right, Anas. Now, the President Ashraf Ghani has vowed to fight back. How do you assess these statements made by the President, despite speculations of him stepping down?
Well, President Ashraf Ghani has made a public address just a while back. And he has the most important line that he has said is that he has a historic responsibility to not allow any bloodshed from an imposed war anymore. He said that he is consulting, he is undertaking consultations both home and abroad. He said that remobilization of armed forces is the top priority in face of advancement of Taliban in different provinces of the country. And he's also said that this imposed war on Afghans to bring further killing, he would not allow. He would also not allow the gains of past 20 years to be undone. He would not allow destructions of public property and continued instability. Quite a significant address made by President Ashraf Ghani, and he seems to be, at least by the looks of it, he seems to hint at not stepping down, though in the same address he says or claims that he will be continuing consultations with international stakeholders.
Right. Right, Anas, thank you so much for joining us with all the updates on that. And now moving on, for more on this story, we are now being joined by former advisor to the President of Afghanistan, Tariq Farhadi. Sir, thank you so much for joining us at this point. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has said that he will continue to fight and fast consultations are ongoing to end the war. As a former advisor to the President of Afghanistan, what do you think should be the next steps and how do you assess his statements?
Well, greetings to you. It's a difficult situation. The population of Kabul is in panic. The Afghani has lost about 10% of its value in the last few weeks. Right now, the Afghani is 93 Afghani to the dollar, to the US dollar, and a few weeks ago it was 78 to the dollar. So also, as you mentioned, thousands of people have left Kunduz and they have come to Kabul for refuge, but they are sleeping in the streets and the parks. Some of them have been admitted in mosques, but each family in Afghanistan has 5 small children. We see pictures of a humanitarian disaster developing. The Secretary General of the United Nations yesterday said that the situation in Afghanistan is out of control, spinning out of control. These were his words. And the people in Kunduz interviewed, some of them have said when the government bombings started in Kunduz, after the Taliban entered their homes to fight from there, they thought that being on the side of the Taliban or on the side of the government, it doesn't help, basically. It's a war zone. War has come to normal people's lives.
Right.
And if the governments are bombing the city, if the government planes are bombing the city, they will get hurt. If the Taliban are fighting from their homes, they will get hurt. People left. And this situation is not possible for the future. President Ghani understands he must do something. He must decide what to do. And the right thing to do at this point, but in a very organized way, is to give his responsibilities to the parliament. The parliament is a place in Afghanistan where the representatives of all the people of Afghanistan are there. And he should say, look, for the good of the country, I'm stepping aside. Parliament should be responsible to find a peaceful resolution with Taliban. The Taliban have left as a condition that Ghani has to resign. If he does that, then the Taliban condition is fulfilled and the Taliban have no more reason to fight because the Americans are leaving as well. They are even closing their embassy. So Parliament should start negotiating directly, very quickly with Taliban to secure Kabul. We cannot afford bloodshed in Kabul. It's a city of 6 million people. Of course, there are people who are not happy with the Taliban coming. And if the Taliban push, there will be street fighting, and we must avoid it. We are all people with minds that should now work on a peaceful resolution, because even if President Ghani gathered forces, this fight could take months and years, and a lot of people will die. Nobody will win.
Right, sir. I will come to that in just a minute. The Taliban are only 30 miles from Kabul. We heard the United States say earlier that Kabul was not in any imminent threat environment. That does not seem to be the case anymore. What do you make of these rapid advances now?
Two of appointed governors by President Ghani, very close guys to him. One, Mr. Laghwani, surrendered the province of Ghazni next to Wardak 2 days ago. And another appointed governor by President Ghani, Mr. Rahimi, surrendered the province of Logar, south of Kabul, where President Ghani was born. He had appointed one of his closest guys. He surrendered to Taliban. And Taliban now have a momentum. And in Herat, when they came in, there were elements who welcomed them, who opened the door for them. Unfortunately, it's not one way or the other in Afghanistan. It's a mixture. Some people welcome the Taliban inside these big cities. And Taliban coming into Kabul from Paghman, from Chowki-Arghande, from all these sides is now not preventable, basically. They will come and people will open the door for them. But then they will reach areas of Kabul where people will resist them. So we must avoid all of that. We must, if Taliban come into Kabul, they have to come after some sort of peace truce has been worked out.
Right, sir. Coming back to the point that you made earlier, the Afghan forces, despite having great number of boots on ground, with 18 provinces now falling, are seemingly not putting up a fight. What is the reason? Ashraf Ghani in a statement did say that he will look to reorganize the Afghan forces. What do you think that means in this conflict situation?
Unfortunately, the CIGAR reports, Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, have revealed that the Afghan forces are no longer 300,000 people. The report says that there might be a fifth of that or sixth of that. And this is an unfortunate situation. And President Ghani will be able to gather a couple of units, but only to protect the presidential palace. But here we're talking about protecting the population of Kabul, which is 6 million. In the big cities, in the other big cities, the population has been a bystander in the war between Taliban and the forces. In Lashkar-Gah, the Afghan forces resisted for a long time. And then suddenly Lashkar-Gah fell yesterday. Kandahar fell. Most important cities with meaning have fallen now. In the north, a few of the former warlords who had fought against the Soviets and later against the Taliban are still hunkering down. But the solution now is peace. Even Ismail Khan, who was caught in battle in Herat by the Taliban, was treated respectfully by the Taliban. And Mullah Mutaqi, one of the leaders of the Taliban, called him on the phone and said, look, welcome to our ranks. We are not going to harm you, but as an elder, you have to advise everyone for peace. So could that be that we have a window for peace in Afghanistan? If we do, we must use it. We must call on the Taliban to avoid violence. The situation is such that President Ghani might be ready to resign. Let him resign in time. Let him organize this with Parliament. Parliament can start talking to the Taliban. The international community has recognized now that the Taliban are part of the solution in the future, so we have to find a peaceful way with them for the sake of the country and to avoid violence.
All right, so just to be clear here, you're saying if President Ashraf Ghani decides to resign at this point, there is a chance that the Afghan forces can overturn the advances made by the Taliban?
No, there is no chance now to gather the Afghan forces. There's only a chance to gather a few units to protect Ghani and the palace for a few weeks. But the Afghan forces are now, unfortunately, in total disarray, and the leadership of the Afghan forces has been confusing them for the past few months. President Ghani has changed leadership of the army and the Interior Minister 6 times in this last 7 months. So some of these units don't even know who to call when they need support and help.
All right. All right, sir, and it is important, very important actually, to talk about this. Caught in the crossfire are the residents and civilians in Afghanistan. What can you tell us about the situation for the civilians? We know tickets for flights out of Afghanistan have been scarce, and Taliban now hold half of Afghanistan's 34 provincial capitals. How do you see this situation evolving?
There is fear, because last time Taliban came in, they were not very friendly with the population. They put the women at home. There are reports that they have been doing this. Now in Herat, they have asked the female university students to go back home for now. And they have gone to some banks and they have asked all the female workers to go home. So people are fearing what is next. The responsibility of every Afghan politician with a voice is to quiet those fears and put aside the military solution, because the people are exhausted with war. And when weapons talk in cities, it is the civilians that lose out. At the least, they lose their homes. At the least, in Lashkargah, businessmen lose their businesses and what was in their stores. We must find a smart way to end this. We must call on the Taliban to come into Kabul in peace. Peace needs to be worked out before their entry to Kabul happens. The IOM, International Organization for Migration, has said last week that 30,000 Afghans are leaving Afghanistan right now, and this number is likely to double. And our Afghans are going towards Iran and Turkey, and families that are educated find themselves in the hands of human traffickers. We don't want that. We have to avoid that. We have to bring stability to Afghanistan.
Right. All right, Mr. Tariq Farhadi, thank you so much for joining us with all your insights on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.